Please join me in the prayer for illumination found on the screen. O wisdom, your power is unlimited and unceasing. Call us, wake us, bring our imaginations to and for life. Push us, move us, remove the barriers of our apathy, and fill us with the courage to act with your guidance and to trust in the wise and powerful Spirit that made and loved creation. Amen. Our readings this morning are from the New Revised Standard Version. Our Old Testament reading is from Job chapter 28, verses 20 to 27. Where then does wisdom come from? And where is the place of understanding? It is hidden from the eyes of all living and concealed from the birds of the air. Abaddon and Death say, we have heard a rumor of it with our ears. God understands the way to it, and he knows its place. For he looks to the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. When he gave to the wind its weight and apportioned out the waters by measure, when he made a decree for the rain and a way for the thunderbolt, then he saw it and declared it. He established it and searched it out. Our psalm this morning is Psalm 29. Please find it in Voices United at page 756. To God, you powers of the heaven, ascribe to God all glory and strength.
Ascribe due honor to God's holy name, and worship in the beauty of holiness. Glory, glory, glory to our God.
God's voice is over the waters, God's glory thundering across the great waters.
God's voice is power. God's voice is full of majesty.
God's voice shatters the cedars, splinters the cedars of Lebanon.
God's voice makes Lebanon skip like a calf, Mount Hermon stampede like a wild young bull.
God's voice forks into tongues of fire. God's voice shakes the wilderness, sets trembling the wilderness of Kadesh. God's voices cause the oaks to whirl, stripping the forest bare, and in the temple all cry, glory.
Glory, glory, glory to our God.
God sits enthroned above the waters. God is enthroned as sovereign forever. You give strength to your people, O God. Now give to your people the blessing of peace.
Glory, glory, glory to our God.
And our New Testament reading is from Luke chapter 8, verses 22 to 25. Jesus calms a storm. One day he got into a boat with his disciples, and he said to them, let us go across to the other side of the lake. So they put out. And while they were sailing, he fell asleep. A windstorm swept down the lake, and the boat was filling with water, and they were in danger. They went to him and woke him up, shouting, Master, Master, we are perishing. And he woke up and rebuked the wind and the raging waves. They ceased, and there was a calm. He said to them, where is your faith? They were afraid and amazed, and said to one another, "Who then is this, that he commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him?" Thanks be for the word of the Lord.
So as I mentioned earlier, in the season of creation, today is Storm Sunday. This gives us a chance to reflect on all kinds of storms, both literal storms and metaphorical ones. I invite you to check in with yourself. What does the phrase Storm Sunday conjure up for you? I imagine literal storms, hurricanes and tsunamis, tornadoes and blizzards, floods and raging fires. Metaphorically, I immediately consider all the emotional and relational storms of life, both the ones without, the ones outside us, and the internal ones, the storms within our hearts, minds, and souls. Theater and film have mined the imagery of storms for centuries. Think of The Wizard of Oz, where a storm leads the central characters on a journey to their essential selves, to that part of them that God has known all along. Storms, whether within or without, are certainly an important part of this journey of life. The texts that we are hosting this morning from Psalm 29, Job 28, and Luke 8 all involve the dramatic setting and elements of a storm. Each one in some way invites us to ponder the wisdom that creates, sustains, and redeems creation. The psalm and gospel text in particular evoke the calm after the storm, the moments of clarity when we realize that we've been delivered somehow. God has given us shelter or guidance or even the strength to endure the storm. And we find ourselves full of wonder and gratitude for having made it through. In Psalm 29, David shows us, God's people, that whether it is a lament, a thanksgiving, a petition, or praise, we can tell God what we are feeling, and God hears us. Psalm 29 tells us that God is enthroned over the flood, suggesting great power over it. And in hearing this psalm, I wonder about how it is that God is powerful. Power can be defined as the ability to act effectively to achieve a result. Is this the type of power that David is ascribing to God? An alternative translation of Psalm 29, written by Nan Merrill, gives us a clue as to what sort of power is being presented in this psalm. She writes, "The voice of love uproots fear in every human heart. The voice of love is heard in every storm and strips the ego bare. And in their hearts they all cry, 'Glory.'" In Merrill's translation, the voice of God is referred to as the voice of love, and love conquers fear. She concludes her version of the psalm with, "May love give strength to all people. May love bless the nations with peace." This does not say, "May love stop the storm," or "May love make it all go away." It says, "Love," or God, "give strength to all the people and bless all the nations. That's a different and more transformative kind of power. In the passage from Luke, our lens for God shifts to the person of Jesus. Jesus demonstrates his power by calming the storm at sea. Luke tells us that unlike in Psalm 29, Jesus actually stops the storm. I wonder why and how he was able to do that. Was this a demonstration of divine power intended to convince the disciples in the boat about who this Jesus was? Were they still so unsure? On what power did Jesus call to calm the storm? Just as God's power in Merrill's translation of the psalm is the power of love, Jesus' power is holy love, the power of wisdom, the power of God. In love, Jesus rebukes the wind and the raging waves back into their place. And this passage then does two things. It lifts up the power of Jesus Christ to bring calm in the midst of the storm, to effectively calm the storm, and it offers a glimpse into the emotional experience of the disciples after the storm is through. The passage says that they are afraid and amazed, and that they asked themselves, just who is this Jesus who could get the winds and the waves to obey him? They are in awe of him, this man who stilled the winds and the waves. It is this awe-filled moment after the storm that captures my attention. The disciples are a little starstruck, and they're wondering, what does this all mean? What kind of man is able to speak words of rebuke and bring a storm to an end? After the storm, the disciples see more clearly. It's like suddenly they begin to see who Jesus really is. Luke tells us that after the storm, there was a calm. After the storm, and in response to their reaction, Jesus asks the disciples, "Where is your faith?" Now, I've preached before on the different layers of meaning on the word faith. Belief, faithfulness, fidelity, and trust are all aspects of faith. Jesus is calling the disciples to consider all these aspects, but is perhaps emphasizing, or maybe it's Luke that's emphasizing, the aspect of trust. Where is your trust? Luke has Jesus asking us this morning. I have a friend in Vancouver who used to love to sail. He tells a story about once being caught in a terrible storm at sea while sailing from the North American continent to the Hawaiian Islands. He feared for his life and the lives of those on board the boat with him. Now, he is someone with a very strong faith, with a great trust in God. And as he did all that he could do himself, after taking all the steps that he had been trained to take, he gave everything, his fear, the outcome, his emotions, everything over to God in prayer. In that boat, in the middle of the ocean. And he and his friends made it through the storm. And to this day, he insists that it was his trust in God that helped to bring him through those raging waves. Now, even for those who don't survive the storms, God and the power of God's love accompanies them through the terror of it, never for one moment leaving them alone in their fear. As our new creed asserts, we are not alone in life, in death, in life beyond death. There is no moment or circumstance in which we cannot rely on and draw on the power and strength and comfort of God. There's grace in that. So what about the literal storms? Those storms that seem to be on the rise, that are at least more severe, and that are of our own making. We have seen dramatic changes in weather patterns in the last few years. How is God guiding us, the people of God's church, to respond to these devastating climate changes? How are you being inspired by God's wisdom to respond? And when it comes to advocating and caring for the natural world, what would faithfulness to God look like now? Many emergent theologians insist that attending to God's creation, that attending to the changing climate and all the factors that contribute to this process, is the central, most important task of the church today. What would it mean for us to take this assertion seriously? And what about the storms within? When we are wrestling with an interior storm, how do we take those seriously without letting them overcome us? This morning's text suggests that when we lean into God, when we trust God to guide us, God gives us the strength to get through the various storms of our lives. In the middle of the storm, God says to Job, to David, to the disciples, to baby Evelyn, whom we baptized just now, and to us, I will give you the strength you need to get through it. Trust me, have faith in me, draw power from me, let go. God guides us, strengthens us, and accompanies us on our journey through the storm, and is with us when the storm finally stops raging and all is calm once again. And sometimes we experience the storm within and the storm without at the very same time. In the same moment, in the same season. It's not a question of one or the other, but of both and. As we face the storm elements that are coming toward us, whether as intense weather or intense stressors of another kind, we can feel that turbulence reflected within and vice versa. No matter which storm brews first, the divine invitation is the same. Trust God with all of it, in every minute of it, for all your days. And God's presence and love in your life will in some way indeed still the storm. I believe that we can trust that. That said, when we are immersed in the chaos and anxiety of the storm, when we are praying to God to get us through, we can't imagine how we are ever going to smile again, or relax again, or sleep again. We can't imagine how we will get through it. And then, as we choose to surrender it all and trust in God's power of love, somehow we begin to get through it. And the next thing we know, the day comes when we look around and everything seems brighter. when we look at the world and our lives with fresh and more rested eyes, now that the storm has passed, God has brought about a time of greater clarity and greater peace. The air is clean, the waters are calm, the ground smells good, and everything feels renewed. We honestly weren't sure how we would get through. Yet, together with God, we have weathered the storm. And in our hearts, we cry, "Glory." Thanks be to God.